Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started with our introductions. Anyone who's still tuning in and joining from the waiting room, let us know where you are calling in from. And anyone who is not talking, if you could just make sure to have yourself muted so we can eliminate any background noise. And perfect. Thank you all. So my name is Brielle. I am the director of the Global Majority Caucus at Apex Advocacy, and we are so excited for you all to be here with us for this Fundraising Essentials session, which is part one of a 4-part Fundraising Made Easy training series that Apex Advocacy and the Global Majority Caucus has organized in collaboration with 50 by 40 and their Global Majority Program. And so in case you are new to hearing about either of these organizations, just so you have a basic understanding, Apex Advocacy aims to increase the number of Black, Indigenous, folks of color who participate in animal activism by advocating for collective liberation through animal rights, particularly in marginalized areas and communities that are disproportionately affected by the animal industrial complex. The Global Majority Caucus is a space for folks of color, folks of the global majority who are in the animal advocacy space to really feel a sense of belonging. This is a community for us, by us, where we offer free community building events.
Problemas ahí con...
Oh, can you make sure that everyone is muted so we can eliminate any background noise? Thank you so much. Excellent. So the Global Majority Caucus is a space for animal advocates of color and folks of the global majority in the movement to feel a sense of belonging. And we offer free community building events, as well as professional development opportunities and leadership development opportunities, kind of like this fundraising series that we are hosting today. Global Majority Program by 50 by 40, 50 by 40 in general is a coalition of organizations dedicated to cutting the global production and consumption of animal products by 50% by 2040. And their Global Majority Program is more international focused and working with folks of the Global South to help build access to funds, increase access to knowledge, and increase representation in the movement. The Global Majority Caucus at Apex, we're international, so we have folks predominantly in the USA. About 70% of our community is US based and another 30% is global. So that's a little bit about our communities, and I'll drop some links for you to check out and learn more if you desire to. And as I shared, this is part one of our Fundraising Made Easy series. We'll have 3 more sessions after this that I will tell you more about at the end of today's session in case you love this and want to make sure that you learn all the other great things that we're going to be sharing in this series. And really, we created this because one of the most common challenges that we hear from folks of the global majority and folks of color in the movement is difficulty accessing funds. And so we wanted to provide some of the basic information for if you are a newer organization, a smaller organization, you're building the capacity of your existing organization, or maybe you just have an idea about an initiative that you would like to start one day, and you want to gather information about how can you make the best case for getting funding to do the incredibly important and meaningful work that you are doing. And the thing that I really love about this is I think that folks in our community have really unique and culturally relevant approaches to veganism and animal advocacy. And so we want you to have the funding to do your amazing work. And so that's why we created this series. And today, we're going to be starting with Fundraising Essentials, and Monica Chen from Factory Farming Awareness Coalition is going to be sharing all about that. And throughout the session, if you have questions, feel free to ask in the chat, and we'll keep an eye on those to try to answer as going throughout. And anything that we don't get to might be addressed in one of our later sessions in the series. So without further ado, I am going to pass it over to Monica.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Brielle. Hello, everyone. My name is Monica Chen, and I'm the Executive Director of Factory Farming Awareness Coalition. I have had a few folks ask me if their cameras should be off. My answer is you can have it off, but if you have your camera on, I feel less like I'm talking to myself. So if you would help make me feel like we're actually in this together, that would be lovely. And I do utilize the chat. I'm not here to lecture you. I am here as one of your fellow community members in this space. And I think that that's the value add that I bring. I am not somebody who has a special degree in fundraising. I consider myself more of what they call a generalist. But I do know our space pretty well, and that's what I hope to talk about with all of you today. I am also an ED. I'm not a development director, and that gives me a slightly different perspective. FFAC does not have a development director at this time. I handle all of the major gifts and most donor relations, and I also have staff that work on much more specific things like email campaigns, digital marketing, etc. I wouldn't say that I'm like the best fundraiser of all time. I know it's not a competition, but I think that over the past 4 years, I have learned some things and was able to double our budget since 2018, which I'm really proud of, because it's enabled us to essentially increase our impact. And that's my ultimate goal, which is to end factory farming. I also was happy to accept this invitation because while I don't consider myself an expert, I do not think that fundraising needs to be so hard. I made the mistake. I won't call it a mistake, but when I was first getting into this space, it just seemed like I would look at all the other organizations, see everything that they were doing and be like, gosh, I guess we should hire consultants. And these extremely expensive consultants would tell us that we needed to do all these things. And I'm here actually to tell you, I disagree. I do not think that fundraising needs to be that hard, especially in our space where you've got people who are really passionate. It's really about what you are doing, your intervention, the way that you're solving the problem, the specific niche that you feel that you need to be able to articulate. So today I have a presentation. Can you nod if you're seeing my slides? Perfect. All right. So this is an outline of what I'll be discussing today. Basically, learn the landscape, build relationships, and be clear about the niche that you feel and how you're doing it. And then really just don't do too much, or only do the things that are worth your time or will pay off in the time that you need it to. So first piece is around learning the landscape. We are a movement. I do not think of myself as purely a fundraiser for Factory Farming Awareness Coalition. I think of our work collectively around increasing the amount of funding that's available for us to end factory farming, which means that, and that was a huge thing for me, because when I first started doing this work, I felt like I was raising money for myself, and I was not socialized to ask for money for myself, but I was socialized to think about other people, other orgs, other groups, the animals. So I actually am in a really good position at this point in my life to be able to ask for funding, because I don't feel disempowered by that. I actually feel a lot of empowerment in doing that. The total farmed animal welfare movement has, and this is just the number that I've been told from some of the major donors, is that we have $200 million donated annually that comes from, if you sum up all the organizations and their budgets. So what this means is that we all have to be working together, right? I actually would feel very bad if I was a successful fundraiser and I viewed this as a competition and I got all $200 million to FFAC. That's not my goal. I'm thinking about all of you and your organizations and the niche that you fill. A lot of the funders will have different thoughts about how much each organization should get, but it's kind of up to you to sort of share the story and be working with this other organizations. With that, I think that it's really critical for us to be thoughtful. Do we need funding? Because if you don't need funding, other orgs will take it, right? So this is not an opportunity to be greedy. It's an opportunity for you to do some self-reflection with your org and make sure that it's actually impactful, because again, we don't want to be taking funding away from other groups. And this was hard for me, actually. There was a time when at FFAC, I was not entirely sure that we were as effective or efficient with our money as we could be. And that meant that we changed a lot of our programming, and we had to really take the ego out of a lot of what we do. It's so that we could get to the point of being like, okay, now I feel like we're very specific about the niche that we fill. Whereas in the past, we were trying to do everything. So I'll talk about that in a minute. Have any of you ever heard of community-centric fundraising before? Okay, I'm seeing some nods. Anybody else in the chat, those of you who have video off, because I don't know how much detail I should go into for this. The basic idea is what I'm already starting to share, which is that we are a sector. We are people who care about farmed animals. Thank you, Millie. Thank you, Hemi. And we are working together. I am particularly motivated, and sorry, Dawn, that this is a repeat from this morning, about principle number 3 of community-centric fundraising, and that's the reason why I'm here today. I strongly believe that nonprofits should be generous and mutually supportive of one another. So I would hope that you view me not as your competition, but as somebody who's honestly trying to help. And I'll be sharing my email address in the chat as well if you wanted to meet one-on-one. There's all these different points that I try, and I'm not a perfect person. I wouldn't say that I'm 100% community-centric fundraising, but I do very much try and share grant opportunities. I do try to introduce other folks. I am more likely to be able to introduce an organization that is similar to my own, because the people that support FFAC are very focused on youth engagement, as an example. If you work on veganism, if you work with youth, if you work on movement building and capacity building and creating a talent pool, that's sort of my specialty at the moment. All right, so I am sharing here a list of logos of funders. FFAC does not receive funding from all these folks. I would highly discourage reaching out to some of these folks directly. These are the groups that are very public. You can find them all on the website or just by using Google. Some of them have been so public, like Fauna, for example, even sponsored a dinner or a reception at AVA, and we're very open about wanting to connect with people and have an interest form on their website. I would say that it's very important to look at this list and learn more about what they fund and build relationships with them. For those of you that are interested in grant writing, as I saw Cecilia, you'll even be able to find some of the grants on some of those websites so that you can see what information would I need to have and to be able to articulate in order to successfully receive funding. Ultimately, I believe, great. I think that it's about building relationships, and that's what community-centric fundraising emphasizes. It's those relationships and making sure that they are very genuine. I have been very fortunate at this point over the last 5 years that I've been with FFAC to get to meet a lot of the donors in our space. And I can tell you that they're honestly thinking very hard about how do we end this terrible suffering. It's really coming from that perspective. When I come from a super I don't know, liberal background where it's there are people who are wealthy and they're hoarding in everything like that, and they don't care, and they're taking it all for themselves. Being in my role, actually developing real relationships with people, understanding the priorities, learning what makes their heart hurt, all that kind of stuff, that has completely transformed the way that I view our relationships. And I do not view these funders as just pockets of money any longer. I view them as actual partners. There is a public list available that I will put in the chat right now of the various funders for farmed animal welfare. It is not every single funder in the movement, but these are the ones that are very public. And there are some that will tell you, if they're accepting applications, if, the specific types of groups that they fund. There's often going to be minimum, maximum amounts for budget, where people are located, whether you're international or not. There's just so many different little pieces to go over. So I would recommend, oh, good. That's wonderful, Brielle. I would recommend taking a look at that list if you have not already. Well, other thing that I'll mention is that these people are not all the same. So while it is often very wonderful to be able to take the exact same language from one group to another, like really understanding like what motivates different groups or different foundations is very helpful. And I think that actually like meeting other executive directors or development directors, people who have worked with some of these foundations in the past, they'll be able to let you know like what has worked well, what they're specifically interested in funding, if that information is not already available on their website. Also, as we look at the landscape, I think that it's helpful to see some of the materials that the funders are seeing. So this is very public from the farmed animal funders, which is the group that exists of folks who give at least $250,000 a year. And in 2021, they put out a call, and a lot of orgs, including many of the ones that I see on this call, they did contribute to that survey. And you'll see that there are certain areas that are considered neglected. You'll see that there are specific breakdowns in how many organizations have budgets of under $1 million and how very few of them have budgets over $5 million. I think that it's just helpful to have this information as you're thinking about how you want to approach different funders. My experience with most grants and farmed animal funders is that they are not that complicated and that I have not had to hire an external grant writer for them. Just to put it out there, I have found that many folks believe in trust-based philanthropy, or they're trying not to make it particularly arduous. You hear about that a lot in the nonprofit sector. And while there's certainly, opportunities for funding relationships to improve always, I will say that compared to some of the other sectors I've seen, like I see the progress in our sector of like not trying to create a million hoops for us to jump through. It's really about like, can we get this work done? We really are trying to end factory farming. To meet with some of these funders, and not just like the FAF funders, but even some of the smaller ones, relationship building takes time. I would highly recommend attending events online, including this one, and in person. When I was at the AVA Summit back in October, most of the funders were there from what I could tell, and they were right there. Like you could go up to them, or you could ask, somebody like me to introduce you if it makes sense. I can't always do that because I have no idea. But I find it helpful to like just go up to people and talk to them. Were any of you at the AVA Summit this year? Because it'd be wonderful to know. And I hope that if you come to the one in Los Angeles this summer, we can absolutely connect. Okay, yes, Cecilia, Chris was there. Yeah, yeah, there were a lot of folks there. Ty, yes, I know you were there. Jen and Grace, yep. So that was a really incredible opportunity that we weren't able to have over the last 3 years. So it's a pretty big deal that and of course, this event didn't happen just by accident. That was actually a lot of donors really working hard to make themselves accessible, to create community, to support work. There's many objectives of the AVA Summit, but in general, I'd say that it is trying to, again, fill a void that we just didn't have that over the pandemic. And it made my job as an executive director, like trying to get funding, really hard when I had to do everything without people knowing who I was. Actual FaceTime very much matters. Okay, so now we're in the piece of my presentation where I want to be clear about the niche that you fill and how you are doing it. So this is tough. It's required so much time on my part. When I think about grant writing is not what's hard. It's the actual strategic planning that's hard. It sounds easy and it's not. And we had to be really clear about what we do. So originally our mission was around just like ending factory farming. But is FFAC going to end factory farming all by itself? Absolutely not, right? So we wanted to be super clear about what we do. Our focus is with high school and college students. We're focused on empowering people. That is the specific niche that we fill. And we work with a lot of other groups. Mercy for Animals, the Humane League, Better Food Foundation / Greener by Default, right? We bring in a lot of speakers with other organizations, including Apex Advocacy. We're building the talent pool for the movement, and having that kind of language is really critical for us when we're talking to donors. You can see how that's really different from we do classroom programming and we talk about veganism, which is the way that a lot of people thought about FFAC in the past. So there's a whole very well thought out at this point theory of change on how our programs work together. When I first started getting involved in nonprofits, I thought like all of this was just gobbledygook, that it was just like all these hoops that we had to jump through just for the sake of saying like, yes, we have a theory of change, donor, like check. But now I actually understand the reason behind it, because if you have a clear understanding of the problem that you're trying to solve and how you're going to solve it, you'll be able to explain what you do clearly and share your objectives and key results. It is foundational work. Everything will flow from this. And this is going to suck, but it does have to be revised. So I thought our strategic plan was done. And then we keep on revising it because you know what? The world changes, right? Pandemics happen, life happens, world happens, right? So I am sharing our strategic plan as an example of one. If your strategic plan does not look exactly like ours, that is okay. I share this because I don't think it's a particularly intimidating strategic plan. We've got a budget just over $1 million. And I feel like that puts us like in some middle ground. There are orgs that have budgets of, $20+ million, right? Like the Good Food Institute. They're going to have a very different strategic plan. They're going to have a much larger development team. That's also very different from an org that is just starting out. So I thought like sharing ours would be like just one to reference. It is pretty easy to go to the website of most organizations and see what their strategic plans look like, which will help inform you as you think about, again, the niche that you're trying to fill. What is the problem you're trying to solve? How will you solve the problem? And how will you measure if you are successful? Okay. Any questions about strategic plans? I hope that I'm making it very clear that I believe that this whole process of knowing how you're going to measure what you do is essential before you try and go and write a grant. Once you have all this language written down, grant writing is pretty easy. You'll see in ours, just as an example, we have 3 programs that work synergistically. We will speak to over 50,000 students from classroom programming, and we use that as grounds to recruit for our Advocacy Institute, which is a training space, a semester-long internship opportunity where we give students a lot of theoretical knowledge about like the impacts of factory farming and skills where they learn how to run campaigns back in their communities, in their schools. They have the opportunity to run these campaigns and as practice for essentially shifting culture in their careers. And we hope that each of those schools that we build relationships with over time will be able to do a whole lot more in terms of their institutional campaigns. We are able to see through our surveys that there's a lot more support for vegan options, that there's a lot more support for things like Prop 12, etc. Okay. So once you've done that foundational work, which again, I really want to stress, now let's talk about these next pieces. So I am not going to sit here and tell you how to do every single type of fundraising. It's too much. I think that most orgs, especially when they're starting out, are pulled in a million different directions and told to do a whole lot of things. When FFAC was starting out, we tried to do everything. We were told, hey, you should sell t-shirts so that you are able to like make a profit off of something. What a ridiculous waste of time that was for us, because keeping track of like the sizes of all those t-shirts, schlepping them around, getting, like $10 per t-shirt, so not worth it. Then having to pay the company that we used, the little square swipe thing, no, not worth it for us. But we did it because we were trying things, and there's always beauty in trying things. But now we do not do that. I'm very passionate about that. We'll see what happens in the future. We also did Veg Fest, which was really important for us at the time because we just needed to get our name out there. We needed to meet more people. We needed to grow our email list. We needed to connect with teachers. We needed to find volunteers. That was a way for us to get donors, a way for us to get our name out there. So we did do that. A couple years later, we recognized Veg Fest does not fit in beautifully with our strategic plan. We've had a history of undervaluing the amount of staff time something takes. So even though we knew that we made $5,000, I'm making that number up, from Veg Fest, it really didn't take into account the staff time that went into it. So there's a lot of like cost benefit analysis that you'll have to do. The link that I shared shows a lot of the different types of fundraising. They say that 71% comes from individuals. I think that ultimately the key things are having a really good website. I am skeptical of a lot of like the other things like crowdfunding and peer-to-peer. It works for some organizations. It will be up to you to figure out what actually makes sense and is worth your time. Somebody in the pre-survey was asking about online auctions. FFAC does do an online auction every single year. And we have reasons for that I'm happy to share. But if I would not do that, if I didn't have basically a student or somebody who used to be a student running that. Like if I was the person who was contacting literally 500 companies and trying to coordinate all these donations, you could see how my time would not be worth the $9,500 that we raised. You'll hear about direct mail. FFAC does not do direct mail because we actually heard feedback from our supporters that they would not support us because they consider that to be an unsustainable thing to do. They do not like receiving the mail. Other organizations I know have been doing direct mail for so long, the prospect of not doing it anymore is very scary to them. I get that. We've, changed how we think about events. I've seen orgs put a lot of effort into galas. FFAC was one of them. We used to do a gala every single year. Did we make money on the galas? Not always. I've been told that that's very common as well. It sounds so simple, bringing people together, enjoying food, getting money. It is not. And until you've done it at least once, you might not believe me. And it could be worth it. Mercy for Animals has many reasons for why they do their gala, but there are other organizations like the Humane League that did gala-like end-of-year fundraising equivalents for years, and then at a certain point they realized that was not a good use of their time, and I respect that decision as well. My basic message is that there's no one size fits all. You'll hear about membership programs on that list as well. If you are a small organization, I'm going to straight up tell you that I think it's a waste of time to put together a membership program. I think that if you are a farm sanctuary and you have like the Hilda Club and it's been going on and you've got like donors at a certain amount and there's enough of them, it can really make a lot of sense. But creating all of the perks, keeping track of it, if you've got a budget of like $100,000, I do not think that is where you should start. Of course, what do I know? I don't know your org, but my experience is saying, think very thoughtfully about how you want to invest your time as you go through your fundraising plan, prepare, plan. The other reason why I share all of this stuff on individual donations is because a lot of groups in our movement, and I saw this in the survey, have received funding from like one or two major donors, some of the farmed animal funders. And the risk that you have there is that you'll fail the public support test. I know that some of you are based in the United States. So we are 501c3s, which is a status that we get from the IRS, the Internal Revenue Service. If you don't have, say, about a third of your revenue coming from donors who give 2% or less of total revenue, which I know is a mouthful, but the point is you need to have diverse funding sources. You can't have all of your funding coming from just one or two people because then it looks like you're a foundation. It looks like you're hoarding money. You can't be a 501c3. All right. As you look at like this long list of things from the Donor Box website, I would also suggest signing up for the email lists of other organizations. See what makes sense for you. We've also quite frankly, gotten great email campaign ideas from looking at what the other organizations are doing. I'd say that it's helpful to look at an organization like the Humane League, which has a phenomenal marketing department or development team, their communications team. They're good at it. It's helpful to like see, see how they set things up. It might inform your work as well. Follow them on social media. Just follow a lot of groups, the ones that might inspire you, also the ones that are at your level. I know that we've sometimes felt a little bit sad as a team when we just look at an organization that has a $20 million budget and we're like, wow, they do so many things. And we're like, well, they have 10 times as many people. And I bring this up because I noticed that one of you in the pre-surveys talked about how you're a really small team. And I recognize that. And it can feel like you're pulled in a lot of directions. Do not compare yourself to the other orgs. Like, take what you can from them, learn from them, but comparison is never your friend. All right. Next. Oh, I did include our auction website because somebody was really interested in online auctions. So that is a link to ours. I actually don't think there are that many farmed animal rights organizations in our space that do auctions. So this was one of the few that I could think of. And of course, it's my own. I did not put together this auction. This was delegated. And if you are an ED, if you are a director, I think delegation is the most important thing for you to learn. It's critical in your job. So trusting other people, empowering them to take charge, feel like they own something is really key. And it went well. And yeah, you can look through our auction. If you're going to do an auction, look at our auction, see who donated, contact those exact same companies, because clearly they're interested in supporting nonprofits in this very particular way. And don't just look at ours, look at others. Again, get on other folks' email list. I do believe, and I remember, Dawn, you said something about this at the Reducitarian Summit, but like having some presence is really key. I believe that websites matter a whole lot. And thank goodness for vegan activists and groups like that that are really able to support some of the smaller orgs. I find that it's very helpful to look at an organization's website, go to the donate page, see how they're having everything flow, because it will help you as you're designing yours. And you'll see that we've got like progress bars. You'll see that we have different donation amounts there, some of which is just considered generally good practice. You'll see that there are places for us to receive money in a lot of different ways. Shout out to those of you who have discovered PayPal giving. I hate giving money to like these big companies that charge transaction fees. It makes me so mad, but I understand how they're able to do it because it's the convenience. And some donors will be like, oh, this is too confusing, I won't donate. They do need the convenience. But as much as possible, I try and encourage folks to donate to us via PayPal giving because they don't actually charge us. Note, PayPal giving is different from PayPal. You have to have the PayPal giving account. There's more that I could say here, but let me know if there's anything that you wanted me to go into greater detail on. The other basic thing that you'll need is a CRM, customer relations management system. If you're a small organization, I recommend using Little Green Light. If you are starting to get a little bit larger and Little Green Light isn't working for you anymore, then consider using Every Action. We use it, THL uses it, and THL, as you know, is a much larger organization than us. Mercy for Animals uses Salesforce, I believe, which is a whole lot to learn. You want to find the CRM that will do only what you need it to do. CRM salespeople are fantastic at telling you all the things that a CRM could do if you pay more and more and more. But be clear about what you want it to actually do. For me, I need to keep track of like every donor, every person on our email list. I need to be able to run reports. I need to see the revenue that's coming in. I need to be able to put in notes from conversations that I have, and I need to be able to send emails through it. That's basically it. And Every Action does that for us. for those of you on this call, what CRMs are you using? I'd love to hear any CRMs that you use, and do you like them? Do you recommend them? Do you not, or for those of you not saying anything, do you not use one? Okay. Yeah, it is, Kelly. Carissa, do you like it? And you can unmute yourselves. It doesn't just have to be the Monica talking show.
Sorry about that. I've been on Zoom for almost 3 years now, almost exclusively, and I was having a hard moment finding the mute button. Yes, we like little green light. It serves us well. Yeah,
Okay.
had good luck with it. Yeah.
Great. I'm seeing a whole lot of other options there. Remember, we're not doing this work ourselves. I spent a long time looking through all the potential options for us, and I leaned very heavily on our nonprofit community. So if you're part of like nonprofit AF on Facebook, for example, or ED Happy Hour, or community-centric fundraising Slack channels, like you don't have to do everything by yourself. Reach out to people. If you're interested in Little Green Light, maybe you reach out to Dawn if you want to learn more about if Millie actually likes Bloomerang and if it would be a good fit for you. Maybe you can reach out to Millie. I'm assuming Millie would be willing to respond. Okay. What a CRM does and the benefits of using one. I don't know how you could possibly keep track of donations without a CRM. Does anybody know how you would do that? Basically, a CRM is, for me, it's just a website that I log into, and it keeps track of all the donors that I have, how much they have given, when, and I'm able to contact those donors through emails using this database. Even companies have like some kind of CRM to keep track of their customers. It's, I guess, an organizational system that you can use to run reports that will help inform you if you are doing things well, if you're seeing dips in revenue. Did that help? Okay, cool. Thank you, Millie. As I was mentioning, community matters a whole lot. I was just on a call earlier this morning for the Dr. Bronner's Fundraising Club, which is another amazing group to join every single month if you're a fundraiser, getting to connect with other fundraisers over a video call, over Zoom. And one of the poll questions that was asked was like how you're feeling about fundraising. And it's always sad when people say that they are feeling isolated, when they're feeling stressed, when they're feeling overwhelmed. It can be all of those things, and I just don't believe that it has to be. And when I look at like all the information that's out there about fundraising, I often feel very overwhelmed myself about all the things that we're not doing. But I also have my community of people, and it has made all the difference. And, you know, being able to be a part of something like the Global Majority Caucus really does matter. So I'm grateful to those of you who work to build that community and to build those relationships. I may not be your biggest funder, but I want to help. And I know that a lot of other folks do too. So those are the relationships that matter. And I hope that you'll work to cultivate them. Okay. All right. So I'm going to sum up the biggest pieces of advice. And by the way, if you want to join the Dr. Bronner's Fundraising Club, I think that you can email constructivecapitaldepartment@drbronner.com. I mentioned the nonprofit happy hour on Facebook, the Global Majority Caucus Slack, the community-centric fundraising Slack. You can just Google some of these things. And of course, Brielle has everything about the Global Majority Caucus. All right, my big pieces of advice. Again, number one, learn the landscape. That is why I decided to accept Brielle's invitation to join this call. I don't consider myself a fundraiser with a ton of degrees. I know the landscape though. I know who the funders are, and I would encourage you to gain this knowledge as well. So read that report that I sent earlier from Farm to Animal Funders. Meet people. learn about the other organizations, get on their email list, have real conversations, build relationships, attend all of the events as much as possible. If you're not able to attend in person, try and set things up virtually. Folks, we have so much knowledge here. Feel free to share some events that you've been to this year that you might encourage other people to attend as well, especially if any of those events created the environment for you to connect with others. So I mentioned Ava, I mentioned Reducitarian, any others? Thank you, Kelly. Any others? We'll see. I still do believe, yes, absolutely. I still do believe that thanking people matters, but not in just like a perfunctory way. I mean it in like a relationship building way. But I am always thoughtful about expressing gratitude. And when I talk to potential supporters of our work, I actually do, as I mentioned, view them as collaborators, as partners. I do seek out advice. I do want to know how people are thinking about our work. Third, as I mentioned, be clear about the niche that you fill and how you're doing it. There is so much that I could say about this. Like this could be a completely separate call on mission, on vision, on programming, on your objectives and key results. Learning some of the foundations that we've applied to don't use the terms objectives and key results. They want to see your KPIs, your key performance indicators. They want you to share your outputs and objectives and outputs. And it just like throws me off a little bit each time. There is a language to learn. But as long as you like have some idea of like what you're accomplishing and when and how you know if you're on track, I think that it's doable. But knowing what to measure absolutely is difficult. There are some organizations like the Humane League that I think do a really phenomenal job of being able to say, with this corporate win, X number of chickens have, Y amount of space, and that results in, this number of qualities. And then there are other things that might be more difficult to measure. Like you could, I don't know, rent out a space for farmed animal welfare groups to gather. What would the actual impact of that be? I don't know. You could measure the number of people using the space. You could measure the number of events there, but does that actually help farmed animals? Kind of hard to say, right? So being able to really explore, analyze, understand, it takes some work. And honestly, having access to groups who think in that very like, I don't know, it's they think in a way that I don't think naturally. There are folks that really love measuring things. And there's a great group, actually put it in the chat, that we worked with called Project Evident, and they have a wallet program to really, and for free, they've been helping us with folks that have PhDs in this kind of like qualitative, quantitative metric work. So that's wonderful. And then, as I said, don't do too much. Stop comparing yourself. Stop it. It's not going to be helpful. You need a website and you need a CRM, and know that everything else, from the t-shirts to the Veg Fest to all the events, know that what you do will change as your org evolves. I am happy to have a conversation with you if it is helpful, or maybe somebody else on this call is, to help you understand like what might be a good way for you to spend your time. All right, so that is the end of my presentation. I got some questions that I'm going to try and answer, but I'm hoping that you'll also ask questions in the chat, because this is our time together and this really isn't about me, it's about you. Do you feel like I have helped you today? If not, tell me what you need. All right, yeah, of course you do, Ty. Okay, thank you, Joy. That is helpful. Somebody asked, how do we appeal more to the grassroots movement? I wasn't sure what you meant by that. So if you can help to clarify it, that'd be great. I saw, thank you so much. Somebody was asking about the process of getting grants and everything. I think that at this point, FFAC very rarely applies for grants that we haven't been invited to apply for, because some of you might know Eat the Change, because that's the grant that a lot of us might be eligible for. And if you have not learned about it, go ahead and check it out. I didn't love applying for Eat the Change because there's so many organizations that are trying to get the same amount of funding. And it does feel like a competition, and we just stopped receiving it. And I was just sort of like, okay with it. I prefer, it's a better use of our time to be invited to apply for funding as opposed to like these open calls. But if you don't have some of those invitations, like, I absolutely understand why you would do an open call, and that's what we've done as well. Kelly, you sent me this question as a direct message. I hope that you don't mind that I just sort of like read it and ask to understand it. So Kelly, your question is around talking to funders if you promote reducitarianism versus veganism. Can you share with me a little bit more? And if you don't mind unmuting, I think it'll be helpful. Like, just like what the specific struggle is. Is there like a specific funder? Is it around your messaging being appealing to everybody?
I just feel that people in this space might be like promoters like ASPCA, for example, like groups that are promoting veganism only. And I just wonder, like, if there's groups out there that, like, I mean, I know like reducitarianism, like that's promoting, and 50 by 40 in general is promoting like reducing like animal consumption and making sure that the remainder of animal agriculture is produced more humanely. And if that's what we want to promote versus like, you know, strict veganism, that sort of thing, like how do we navigate some of those funders?
Yeah, the funders are different and they will
Monica, this is Joy. Before you answer, because I have such a similar question, I want to just piggyback on that question with another piece. This is Joy Waters. Because I've been doing like projects for a long time and feel that even in my own activism, some of the projects I want to focus on, I'm not saying everybody should do this, but are kind of a Trojan horse approach, in that the vegan message, like instead of producing the Veg Fest, I'm doing a Water Fest now, because the community here all cares so much about water issues, and then putting that message in it. Not just that, but also a lobby thing. So that piece I just wanted to add on. If you have any advice about widening the neck to, we sort of call it vegan adjacent, people care about very similar issues, but at the heart of it, it's vegan. Is there an audience for that? I just wanted to add that in there.
I think there's an audience for most things. First of all, there's a difference between reducitarianism and like welfare. Things like the January, which I know like the hardcore like vegan diet change funder support, is about promoting veganism in January, or like Green Monday or Meatless Monday. Like a lot of those campaigns are not about going like full on vegan forever. It's an introductory program, right? And I think that there are funders who will support that. I differentiate that from the campaigns that are less about like animal liberation and more about like welfare and like smaller changes to an animal's living conditions. I feel like, Kelly, that's not really what you're asking about though, because I don't know if like, actually with the just livestock transition in the US, I'm not entirely sure which pieces you'd be promoting. But there are certainly, I'm sure, ways for you to think about how different parts of what you do could appeal to different funders. My experience is that very few funders, like even an organization that's being funded by a lot of like Open Philanthropy Project, for example, like Open Philanthropy Project might not fund everything that an organization does. It might fund like something very specific, like the chicken welfare campaigns or with corporations or something like that. There might be something else that an organization does. So it is possible to separate your work into different programs. And sometimes even those programs have different theories of change. And then Joy, what I'll just add is that FFAC is also I mean, we're Factory Farming Awareness Coalition. We absolutely care about animal rights. And we also care a whole lot about climate change and sustainability. And we care a lot about public health. And we care a lot about like youth empowerment. And I don't see any reason why we shouldn't be able to get funding from some of those other, I'll call them cause areas, even though I believe they're so interrelated. It's really about like how you market yourselves and how you share your story. And of course, if I'm having a conversation with a foundation that cares about climate change, am I going to focus as much on the suffering of animals? Probably not. But I care a whole lot about the suffering of animals. I care about all these things. And what's hard is not everybody cares about the exact things the same way that you do. Does that help, Joy?
Yeah, can I just ask another different topic, but also wanted to get one thing as I'm moving now into doing
Did Joy disappear?
more. I worked for a farm village. Oh, can you not hear me?
Now we can.
Okay. I'm just wondering, some of the funder people were reluctant to give money to lobby initiatives, groups that were working on influencing legislatures. And they're like, well, we don't want to be political. So I'm just wondering if you have any advice. Have you run into that in terms of, because I know you guys work on legislative issues as well. So is that part of, is there?
Poor Joy with all the freezing. I get your question. We could have a longer conversation about this, but you should not expect.
I just was surprised to hear that.
Yeah. Okay. Joy, I think that it was important for me to not feel entitled to any funding. And I had to understand what every single funder was thinking about, because all these funders have their own theories of change. All these foundations are thinking about what they think is most effective to end factory farming. Some of them will say that legislation, lobbying efforts are absolutely the way to go, especially if it relates to alternative proteins. There are others that are like, no, that is a complete waste of time. I think that we should be focused on diet change education. And there are those that believe that it should just be focused on corporate welfare, whatever it is. So Joy, a big piece of what you're going to have to do is like learn more about what all the funders actually are going to fund. And there are groups like Fauna that do a great job of like just putting that on their blog. Like check out their blog, see what they think, see if you might be a good fit. Okay, there are a lot of other questions, not much time. Cecilia, I have so much to say about FTX and what that means for the animal advocacy movement. I'll just say that it's going to impact funding for sure, and I've already seen that. We can talk more, Cecilia. Hannah, how do you build those relationships? You actually go to these events, you talk to people. That's really it. I mean, that's how you get invited, is they hear about your work. And ideally, remembering that, we're mutually supportive of one another, you get somebody who is familiar with your work and is receiving funding, and maybe you're able to make an introduction and you pay it forward, and you create that ecosystem for all of us to thrive. Okay. Any other questions, Brielle? I know you also said that you wanted about 5 minutes, so you let me know. I see Panama. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. You have your hand raised.
Yeah, it's Panema. You're good. You're very close. So just a real quick question. How do you know if what funders are going to be at these events? Do they usually they'll publish it beforehand, on the, how would you know? The more invite only ones.
I mean, I can just say go to Ava. And
Okay.
when you sign up for a lot of these events, you'll be able to see in an app who's attending.
Okay. They usually just
reach out to try and schedule meetings, or you can just try and pass by people casually.
Awesome. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. One thing that I didn't quite get to share that I just wanted to is that I strongly believe that a big part of the board's responsibility is fundraising. So something that we do at FFAC is we have what I call a menu of fundraising opportunities for the board. So these are the things that they can do during the year. This is what they can do during mid-year. We had like individual donation links so that they could thank their donors, that there's like all the things that they could do for end of year, like obtaining items for the online auction, blah, 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 blah. So I just share this as an example because I remember that it can sometimes be very difficult for smaller organizations to really leverage the fundraising power of the board. I hope that none of you feel alone in your fundraising because you should have support. Okay, Riel.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Monica. That was incredibly helpful. I really appreciate you accepting this invitation and think you were the perfect person to kick off this series. So thank you for sharing all of your expertise with us. And thank you to all of you who joined us in, line with one of the incredibly helpful and important things that Monica spoke about. We need your feedback. So I'm going to drop a link to a feedback form because this information helps us to know and share with funders that like this is something that is valuable, that people want, that people gain great experience from. So would love for you to take 2 minutes to complete this form before you sign off today. There's only 2 required questions, and then the last 3 questions are optional, but would really love for you to participate in that so that we can get some good feedback. And this is, as I said, just part 1 of the series. We will have 3 more in this Fundraising Made Easy series in collaboration with 50 by 40. Each of them will follow this similar format where we have 2 different speakers, one speaking more to the concerns of communities in the global south and our international community and at a time in the India time zone, and then another in the Eastern time zone, Pacific time zone for folks in the more global north area. So stay tuned for more information about that. Everyone who has signed up today for this session, we will send out details about the next one, which will be about writing winning proposals. So those of you who are interested in learning about grant writing, but also like writing proposals to when you get that invitation in that direct contact with a funder, what should be included in, say, a 1-pager, a 3-pager when you are submitting those things. After that, we'll have a session on donor relationship building and communication. And last session around just some of the trends in the movement. Someone had asked about, how do you connect with other movements outside of the animal advocacy space? We want to speak to that a little bit. And I'm hoping to wrap some things into that around metrics as well. And the interest was so high in this, so we might continue offering things like this going into next year as well and continuing with that. So one of the questions in the feedback form asks about other topics you would like to see us cover. So please do share if there are other fundraising specific topics you'd like us to cover. If you are a Black, Indigenous, person of color, person of the global majority, would love for you to join our community, the Global Majority Caucus, and it is free to join, and you will get access to our monthly community building events, our book club, a really vibrant resource sharing Slack channel to where, if you come across a funding opportunity, you can share it with other people in the Slack and contribute to this community-centric fundraising. We share about job opportunities with one another, and we just ask each other questions and lean on one another in a way that feels really great and fosters a sense of belonging in this movement. So I will drop the link for the caucus here. And if you are an organization that is interested in learning more about 50 by 40 and becoming one of their partners, again, this is for folks of the global majority. I will drop the link for you to learn more about that. And let's see. Oh, I would love to, for the people who are here who have their video on, or if you would like to turn your video on for this last moment, I would love to take a screenshot of just the folks who are here as a being able to share with other folks who didn't get to make it with us. and I will send out the recording and all of the resources that were shared in this session. But if you want instant access to the resources shared, you can also save the chat by clicking the 3 dots in the chat section and saving that so you have all of these resources right away, and we will also email them out. So for those of you who are okay with taking a photo, you can turn on your camera, and I will take that in 3. Oh, my computer's going slow. In 3, 2, 1. Thank you all so much. Please again, fill out the feedback form and have a wonderful rest of your evening.
Good night, everyone. Thank you so much.
Have a good night, everybody.